Hello and welcome to Indie Comic Ninja. I am Ben Dupay and I helped co-host the interview tonight. So a little bit about what we're doing today. We got the opportunity to speak with a very talented artist by the name of Sedat Oezgen, and he is a German comic book illustrator. He's done some amazing work for Zenescope and some other publishers, and we got a chance to just talk about his background a little bit with him and the work that he's done for different publishers, and talk about pop culture and even the Alien movies and the Prometheus movie and the upcoming Alien Covenant movie. So it was a really interesting chance just to get to sit down with him and have an open discussion with him about his influences and his work and stuff like that. So a little bit about what's going on with Indie Comic Ninja right now. We are having an iTunes review contest for the month of January. To enter into this contest, all you have to do is give us an iTunes review, and you're entered into a chance to win one of our t-shirts. It's an Indie Comic t-shirt. It's on a tri-blend, which is really soft material, really nice shirt. And we're just, we're giving that away. We're also giving away a combination Batman Funko Pop figure. So if you want to be entered into the contest a second time, all you have to do is give our sister podcast, Nerd Church Radio, an iTunes review, and that gives you 2 entries into the contest. Now, you have to give us iTunes reviews in the month of January. The cutoff date for this contest is January 31st. So just give us those iTunes reviews, and you're entered into a chance to win the contest. Other than that, I don't really have anything else for you guys, so I'm going to send you off to the show.
Thanks, man.
That's really cool.
Yeah, that's actually, I don't use Skype too often, so I assume the picture is from like 2013 or something like that. So
That's cool. Is that something you drew?
Yeah.
Oh, very cool. That's awesome.
Is it the old school logo?
Excuse me?
Is it the old school? I can't see the screen.
Yeah, it's the old school.
That's the good one. Okay, yeah, good.
Big bad guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the new school Lobo, the new 52 Lobo, the kind of hipster looking one with skinny jeans and stuff. Yeah, he's never been my favorite. Cool. So I'll kind of kick off the interview here. So where are you originally from?
Okay, I was born in Turkey. Actually, I was born in a city called Batman. That is no joke.
Oh, seriously?
Awesome.
That's amazing.
Yeah, man. I wherever I go, when I introduce myself to like comic book people, I tell them, and most of them don't believe me, but it's actually true. You can even Google it. But I was born in Turkey, but I'm Kurdish, and but I grew up in Germany. I came with my family in 1985 to Germany, and so basically I'm German.
Okay, very cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's like 2 years before I was born. So
That's the year I was born. So.
Oh, seriously? Oh, that's awesome.
There you go.
You guys can just say that I'm an old guy, and that's cool.
No. So how long have you been professionally drawing comic books for?
Well, it's kind of a long story because I published my first professional comic book in 2009, but I basically took a break from comics from 2010 until like 2013. And, I got back into comics in 2013 when I did some work for Zenescope. And then in 2014, I basically, comics were my only occupation.
Very nice.
Yeah, and I see you constantly drawing and stuff. You're kind of a machine, man. With how much you do.
Yeah,
so.
I think you're one of the more active people that I follow on Instagram. So, and everything that you put up there is just amazing.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, it's because I don't have a life, and I'm just basically some kind of a hermit who's sitting at home all the time and drawing while other people are doing all the crazy stuff. And I'm like, it's Saturday night. Let's party with my pants.
That's awesome, though.
Yeah. So, what comic did you do for Zenescope that got you back into the comics?
I did Grim Fairy Tales for them.
Right. Okay. That's really cool.
And yeah, in 2013, before I got back into comics, I was working in the gaming industry here in Germany.
Oh, nice.
And I had lost my job like a few months earlier. And, I wasn't sure if I was going to, continue working in games because the German gaming industry is really, shaky in the best way to say, because people constantly lose their jobs because most, companies are some kind of startups, and they usually rise, and then they hire a lot of people and all that stuff, and then they go broke because they don't make money, and then they have to fire a lot of people. And at that time I was basically at a crossroad where I had to decide what am I going to do next. And the good thing was, a few months earlier I had booked some tickets for New York Comic Con.
Nice.
And when I went to New York Comic Con, I basically introduced myself to all kinds of publishers, and I talked with Anthony Spey from Zenescope, and he really liked this stuff. And a few months after the convention, he contacted me and asked me if I wanted to do some stuff for them, and I did.
Nice.
That's awesome. So you brought your portfolio with you then when you went to New York Comic Con?
Exactly. I did some sample pages based off Marvel and DC scripts, and also made a bunch of hard copies of my portfolio, because that's usually the best way in order to give the editors something to remind them of you.
Yeah.
Because they meet so many people at the convention, and it's hard for them to keep track of you and remember you. And unless you have a crazy name like mine, then it will stuck. But
or unless you're from a town called Batman.
Yeah. But I think at that time I didn't mention it too often. But now I'm constantly doing it, because in 2016 I was in New York again, and I did have an interview with Marvel.
Nice.
And I told them what wouldn't it be the coolest thing if Marvel hires a guy who was born in Batman?
That's awesome.
That's how you could make some commercials or some kind of ad and say, you guys may have Batman, but we have the guy who was born in Batman. So
that would be
That's
awesome. Yeah. So did when you went to the Comic-Con, did you sit through a review process, or did you just try to track people down and show them your work? I
did both.
Okay.
I before the convention they were handing out a sheet, and I was also looking on the New York Comic Con homepage, and I was looking which writers and artists were there that I could talk to, show my stuff to, because at that point I wasn't really sure how all of this worked, and I thought maybe if you show your work to some artists, maybe they can introduce you to someone. And but what I learned is that usually the best thing an artist can do is recommend you, but that doesn't happen too often. And I went back to New York in 2015, and by that time I knew that the most important thing was to talk to the editors, and to get feedback from about the art is usually it's the best to go to the artist if you want to know where to improve with your art, and if you really want to know where you're standing with the stuff, if you can make it at the publishers, is talking to the editors, and they will tell you if your stuff is good enough or not.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's good information.
Yeah.
Yes.
So how old were you when you sort of started to study? I mean, because I know you originally went to school for comic book art, correct?
No, I studied design at in Münster. It's called Münster, and at that time, I was basically, my professor, he didn't want anyone to draw comics. And
oh, really?
Yeah, because he always said that's like that's like something you can't make money with.
Oh yeah.
And I told him, no, I'm here to learn how to make children's books.
Hmm.
And by the end I did create comics all the time. And he saw that I was serious about it, and then he started to allow the students to draw comics. And yeah, and he also went to South Korea, and he saw how big manga was there, and so he thought, maybe I should give it a shot. And yeah.
Well, now it's I mean, and when was this that all this happened?
I think it was around 2005, 2004.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool.
I feel like that's when manga was kind of starting in America.
Yeah,
I guess, right around that time too. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like at that point in time I was hearing a lot about it. So, yeah, very cool. So a lot of the work that you do, I mean, so Zenescope, that's an American publisher, correct?
Yes.
So is a lot of the work that you currently work on, are those for American publishers, or do you work on any stuff for German publishers as well?
No, I have never worked with a German publisher, which is funny. I have only worked with American companies so far, because I don't know, they're the only guys who make comics, because here in Germany it's different. I mean, there are German comic companies and people are creating comics, but it's basically more something like a hobby, because they're not able to pay you.
Okay.
And the French market is big, but the French people, they don't look for the kind of style that I have. French comics are a little bit, they're different from the American market, because the art is, they have a bigger variety of art, and the styles are very different. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with Mobius, for example.
Yeah.
I'm not. Are you, Dexter?
Yeah, is that the mouse one? No.
No, he was one of the concept artists for the Fifth Element, and he created the Metabarons and the Incal. So and his style, a lot of American artists are fans of his work. If you know Jeff Darrow.
Okay. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, they have a very similar style, and American comics are, the style within American comics is more polished, and while I would say French comic style is a little bit more organic and more less superheroes, but more adult content. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at some of it right now. Jean Giraud, I believe, from Mobius, and I just Google image search, but it looks very, very illustrative type work, and not in the same way that not very, very different from like Marvel and the big two, Marvel and DC comics.
Yeah. Yeah. He actually did work. He did some work for Marvel. He did a Silver Surfer run for them. Back then, I think it was in the early 90s, maybe late 80s. And I mean, the guy was a god. I mean, he was amazing. And I remember when I saw his work for the very first time, I was very young and I wasn't really impressed, because I was looking for guys like Jim Lee and Travis Ray. But at some point, I revised his stuff, or I revisited his stuff, and when I saw it, it struck me like lightning, and I was totally blown away by his work. And he's one of my big inspirations.
Nice.
Yeah, a lot of the inking on this stuff that I'm looking at of his, it looks like it's done with like rapidographs or fine liners or stuff like that.
Yeah, I think he worked with crow quills, but the funny thing about Mobius is he had different allies, he used different names. Basically, he called himself Jean Giraud, which was his original name. Then he called himself Mobius. He called himself Gir. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. And with every name he had a different style, and he mastered it, each style like a master basically.
Yeah, that's really cool.
What are you working on right now?
It's a science fiction opera called Specimen, for a independent publisher, or it's basically a guy who pitched his idea to a film studio, and they seem, at that point when he pitched it, they were interested in buying the story, but I don't know, they didn't want him to like keep the rights for this stuff, and then he thought, it might be better to make a comic out of it first, so basically to have a different standing, I believe, and we've been working on this, but it's not really a comic in the traditional way of comics, because the format is a little bit different, and the way he the pacing is different, and I think I showed you guys a little bit of the stuff that's in there, and for example,
is this the stuff with kind of like the black backdrop on it and a lot of the square text bubbles, or they're
yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool.
It's the colored ones.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I just wanted to make sure I was looking at the right thing.
Yeah, that's a really the art is really nice in there.
Thank you very much.
Especially being like a sci-fi thing, things look very organic and nice.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, the thing about this comic book is that it's really challenging, because usually when you're working on a comic book, it's like that you have 4 or 5 panels on one page.
Yeah.
But with this comic, I had pages with like 15 or even 18 panels, and I was basically challenged to draw everything that's available. I had to draw like from dinosaurs to spaceships, everything in this comic book, and I think it was also great practice for me as an artist. I mean, as an artist, you grow every day. The more you draw, the better you become, and I've been drawing everything and anything. I once told a friend of mine, I said, when I'm done with this comic book, I can draw a normal comic page within like 4 or 5 hours, because I had to try to draw pages with 12 panels on one day, which forces you to be fast without losing the quality in the art. And I think I didn't do a bad job at it. So
no, you did a fantastic job.
No, especially there's one panel. I mean, and this is something that I've always noticed about your work, is like your ability to draw geometric structures like buildings and cities and stuff, and it's just astounding, man. Like the level of just detail, and everything looks perfectly aligned and stuff. It's just, I mean, how long have you been drawing geometric figures like that for?
That's actually, when I showed around my stuff when I was younger, and, people would tell me, yeah, the stuff is good, but your backgrounds are, lacking, and you should be working on your backgrounds. And then, I'm very tedious about this kind of stuff. And I started to like draw backgrounds in every panel. And, whenever I drew something, I started doing backgrounds, and so I got used to basically, drawing very detailed and geometric forms and everything, and so that's how this started.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, that's a good example of listening to those editors and critiques when they tell you to get good at something. Man, you nailed this one.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Because there's always those comic book artists you see that, like, they shy away from drawing backgrounds. Sometimes there'll just even be like a gradient in the background with nothing, and your work is like the opposite of that, man. Like you see like every detail. It's great.
Yeah. And looking at these pages too that you sent us. So do you do everything as far as the illustration, or do you just do pencils or inking? Do you do the coloring as well?
No, I don't do colors. I only do pencils and inks.
Okay.
I used to just do pencils when I was younger, but at some point I thought I I loved doing inks, but I was terrible at it. I'm still, I still don't feel like, I could ink somebody else's work, but, when I'm doing work, in order to give the piece the final touch, I do my inks by myself because I think, doing it myself is the best way to communicate what I'm trying to say or what I'm trying to communicate.
Yeah, versus having someone else sort of read your blueprint and interpret it their own way, like you do it for yourself, and that's great. Do you tend to prefer, I know I see a lot of ink work that you do by hand on social media. Do you do a lot of this like for this one, did you ink any of it by hand or did you do a lot of it digitally?
No, I did these pages for Specimen. I did all digital because in the process of creating the pages, I sometimes had to go back and change stuff. So I thought it would have been a waste of time to do it on paper because then I would have to redraw and change a lot of the pages, and I thought it'll be better to do it digital. The thing is, I prefer working traditional, like paper, because for me it's like basically having a date. Like when you meet someone in real life, it's more interesting than just to be like Skyping with them or to looking via Facebook. And I mean, a lot of my friends are doing all digital, but for me, it's like, sometimes I will do my pencils digital and then, print them out and, on paper. But, as far as working on this project, I did everything digital because, it wouldn't have made much sense to like, have pages with 18 panels and then, try to draw that small panel with a pen.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I've always preferred, and I'm a hobbyist when it comes to comic book art. I mean, I'm not, but I've always preferred to draw by hand. I don't know. There's something just about the feeling of a brush pen or a fine liner or a pencil in your hand that just, I don't know. I can't get over the digital drawing. It seems it's like this barrier I can't get over, really.
Yeah. Yeah, it's similar to what I keep thinking because I think it's absolutely okay if somebody does his work digital because it's just a tool. It's not like you're pressing a button and the drawing will happen by itself. You still have to be like yeah, you have to be able, because a lot of people do think that they ask me, what kind of program do you use in order to draw this background? And I'm like, dude, I draw this background because I've done so many backgrounds. It's not that, somebody gives me this background and says, hey, use it however you want to use it. Mm-hmm. But, or the figures, it's like, when you're a writer and you're using Word instead, writing stuff on paper. That's the only difference. For me, the thing that I like about working on paper is the happy accidents, which what Bob Ross called them. When sometimes when I work on paper, I will make a mistake, but in the end, it turns out the mistake was something that elevated the art. And yeah, and the cool thing about working on paper is that you cannot zoom into the page, so you won't get lost in the details.
Yeah. And I know for me, like, I'm not an illustrator, but being a fan of comics, what I've really been able to enjoy from illustrators is being able to buy the original art then and have a collection and be able to enjoy, I guess, seeing it firsthand. It's fun, and then finding illustrators like at cons and stuff, then it kind of gives you something to talk about since it's right in front of you rather than on a screen.
Yeah,
exactly. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I love working on paper. It's when I'm done with a drawing, I will like even 3 or 4 days afterwards, I will look at the drawing and see what I did good at the drawing and what I did didn't do good, or there are sometimes like these small details in there which, where I keep thinking, how did you come up with that stuff, man?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's harder sometimes, but the cool thing about having an original is also that you can sell it, and for an indie artist, selling art is very important and is a key part of maintaining a living.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, and that's one thing that kind of it bums me out sometimes because like one of my favorite artists is Fiona Staples, which I'm not. Are you familiar with her?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and like you'll never find an original from her because she works 100% digitally. I mean, I'm sure do prints and stuff like that, but it would be cool to see someone like that maybe do some hand drawn stuff or whatever like that. I think that would be pretty cool. So
yeah, I assume that probably she's working digital because it'll be faster for her to if there is some kind of mistake or something that she doesn't like on a page, then she'll have the possibility to change it within, I don't know, maybe an hour or something like that. Well, if you compare it to a traditional piece, you have to like redraw everything, and that'll probably take a little bit more. I don't know Fiona personally, so I don't know why she's working digital, but I have a lot of friends who work all digital, and they say it goes down faster and it's easier to edit, and that's the most important thing for them, and I respect that.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, she's still one of my favorite artists, but I think maybe some of it has to do with also the fact that, I mean, she does do like pencils, inks, colors for a monthly book, so I mean, I'm sure the deadlines there are pretty can get a little tedious at times. Something I've always wondered about, and maybe you can shed some light on, when typically, like in the industry, if you're working on a monthly title, how far in advance do you typically draw the books? Like, is a 6-issue story arc typically turned in like all at once, or is that something that's like just kind of in current time?
I think it's about 2 or 3 months ahead of the publishing of the book. So I think maybe if it's like a big project at like Marvel or DC, that either the artist will have a longer period to work on this stuff, but I think it's 3 months usually.
Okay, that makes sense.
And that's like 3 months before it's in Diamond, I presume.
Yeah, I think 3 months before it's in Diamond, and then another month or so until it's published.
Oh, okay.
When you say in Diamond, that's not a term I'm familiar with.
Sorry, Diamond Distributors. They're the ones who actually distribute comics.
Oh, okay, cool.
Because I know that like the comic book stores have to order comics like 2 or 3 months in advance, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was
Oh, okay. No, that's something I should probably know by now, but So tell me a little bit about integration.
Yeah, integration is a sci-fi project that I'm working on, or that I started working on with a friend called Storm Smith. He's a writer. He did some screenwriting as far as I know, and he also worked on something for Dark Horse. And he currently started a publishing company with a friend called Ulysses Farinas, and Storm had asked me to, that he wanted to work with me on something, and he had pitched some ideas to me. And I think, through my post on Facebook, he saw that I'm a complete maniac for sci-fi, and he knows that I love Ridley Scott, the director, and He asked me, would you rather do a comic book like this? And I was like, yeah, let's do this. It's really a cool comic book. I don't know how much I can tell you about the story because we've just recently pitched it, but it's basically about a soldier who's participating in a war, and during that war he deserts. and runs away from because he doesn't want to like fight in this war, and he meets these other guys who deserted as well, and they are basically trying to use him against the other side, and that's probably as much as I can say about this book. But it's really, and Storm's writing was super cool because every word that or phrase that he wrote down in this in the script was like I immediately had a picture in my head, and I knew how I wanted to design it, and he was really easy to work with because when he looked through the stuff, he didn't want too much stuff changed in there, and the idea of the comic book was like, for me personally, very, very intriguing, and I had to work with him. I definitely had to work with him, and we pitched this comic to Image Comics, and we're still waiting for a response, and fingers crossed that it might work out, because that would be a dream project.
Yeah. Oh man, if it does, I will say when it does get published, we will definitely review it because it does sound like something that would be right up our alley, and very, very excited. So definitely keep us up to date on what's going on with that.
Yeah, man.
I'd love to hear what other people. I mean, I think you guys are like one of the few, or some of the few people that have seen all the original, or all the artwork that exists so far, and because I couldn't post it on Facebook, obviously, but I really like how the stuff looks, and I'm super excited and to see where this story is going to head to, because Storm basically told me that the rest of the book is going to be some kind of an acid trip, and I am so excited to like see what he comes up with.
Yeah, just from the stuff you've shown us, it looks fantastic, and
very, very Ridley Scott.
Yeah,
too.
That was very much what I was feeling. Exactly. Yeah. No, you hit that on the nose, man. Yeah,
I mean, Ridley Scott is like one of the few people outside of comics that totally inspires me. I think Alien and Blade Runner are some of the best movies that were ever created. Like I've watched Alien probably more than 200 times. And the only thing that will remind you that the movie is from the late 70s is the haircut of the people. Everything else, seriously, it's like everything else in this movie looks like it could have been made as a indie movie in the late 2000s or something like that. It's so good.
Yeah. So I have a two-part question for you then.
Okay.
First, I want to know how did you feel about Prometheus?
I was going to ask that.
And then I also want to know how you feel about the trailer that was just released for Alien Covenant.
Okay, you guys just touched a nerve, because when I was still working in the gaming company, I used to in all the lunch breaks I was debating with the people at work, about Prometheus. The thing about Prometheus is it was visually a great movie, but unfortunately the movie didn't have a story. I thought the idea and the concept of the movie was absolutely great, and the best thing about the movie was that it didn't really have a xenomorph in there. That they were exploring the idea of the alien universe, but unfortunately the characters did really dumb stuff. Like, I mean, I'm not a scientist, but I know that, you shouldn't be touching an alien that you find on an alien planet.
Yeah.
You shouldn't even touch them when they're here on Earth or something like that. And, and this snake obviously seems to be a little bit aggressive, but hey, let's try to touch his face.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, like, these two guys, they get lost in this complex, although they have a what do you call it? They have microphones with them, so they could basically just ask the guys, "Hey, we don't know where we are heading. Can you please direct us in the right direction?"
Yeah.
And that was some of the stuff that really bothered me. But from a visual point of view, the movie was awesome, and David Fassbender, Michael Fassbender, did an amazing job. I mean, he was the best. I could have watched a movie where he was just walking through the spaceship all the time, and I would still would have been happy because he's such a great actor, and I love what he did in that movie.
No, he did a fantastic job.
Yeah.
And with the Covenant movie, I'm a little bit disappointed, if I have to admit. I mean, from visual standpoint, it looks great, but I think the studio bowed to the demands of people to have xenomorphs in there.
Yeah.
And I would have wished that they would have just gone, basically continued the route of exploring the idea of these engineers and what their planet looks like and why they turned against humanity.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was a short teaser, so we don't know what's ahead of us, but I still hope for the best, but I'm a little bit afraid it might turn out not to be that well. But hey, it's another Ridley Scott movie, and at least it'll be a visual satisfaction.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it may be something like similar to how the Force Awakens was a very similar plot to Star Wars: A New Hope. It looks to me like they're going for the very like horror movie Xenomorphs vibe that was in the first Alien movie.
Exactly. And I once said this on Facebook. I said, please don't show us any further Xenomorphs because we have seen the perfect horror sci-fi movie in '79 when he did Alien.
Yeah.
And and he should, I mean, I know that Ridley Scott doesn't have the last word on this because he's just the director. Because there is a studio and they want to make money and they know people always will go for the stuff that they know. It's basically like like the comic industry. I don't think that the publishers are only publishing the characters that they were publishing for the last 60 or 50 years because they want to only do this stuff, but they know people hesitate to buy new stuff and to accept new characters and new content. They just want to stay with the stuff that they know.
Nostalgia.
Yeah, basically. I mean, in comics, there's Image Comics where new stuff gets released, but Image is doing a great job lately. They've been selling a lot of comic books, but I'm not sure if they sell as much as Marvel or DC does.
Oh, I sincerely doubt it.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Have you ever read any of the Aftershock titles that have recently started coming out?
Actually, I haven't been reading any comics lately. I have to admit that because I buy comics, but then I don't get to read them because like I said, I'm a little bit crazy when it comes to drawing. It's like, oh, I'm done with the page and it's only 2:00 in the morning. Hey, let me start to do some sketches, and it's basically like I wake up in the morning or afternoon and sit right in front of the table, start drawing, and go to bed.
Yeah, I hear that's pretty common. I think for illustrators, from what I understand.
But
yeah.
Especially the successful ones, just fully immersing yourself into your work. I mean, that's how you excel at it. I mean, there's no other way.
Yeah, I mean, it's the thing is, I told you guys that I had stopped drawing comics for some time, which was like around 2009 to 2012, maybe early 2013, and I was contacted by a friend of mine. His name is Matt Yoakum. He did some work for Marvel. And he's a writer, and he asked me if I wanted to work with him, and I said, yeah, sure, let's do this. And we started to work on a pitch back then, which unfortunately wasn't picked up by anyone. But he, with that, he ignited a fire, and I started to draw like every day again, and I was constantly drawing. And basically my motivation was regret, because I regretted that I didn't draw for like 2 or 3 years any comics, and that's my drive, that's my motivation. I never want to like be in that a situation again where I'm like thinking, oh, you should have worked on something, and that's like yeah.
Well, that's, that leads into one of my favorite quotes is, the best time to start something is yesterday. The second best time is today.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really good.
Sometimes other aspiring artists, they ask me, because as you guys may have noticed, I post every day something on Facebook or Instagram. And it's like, they're like, how do you motivate yourself? And I'm like, dude, seriously, I don't need any motivation to be drawing. It's like, basically I need more hours in the day to do all the stuff I want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's great. Especially, you do something you love and you'll never work a day in your life. That's
what they say.
That is what they say. It's right here. So one random question: who's your absolute favorite character to draw, just like of all time? Who do you love to draw the most?
My favorite character in general, in comics is the Punisher, but I would say my favorite character to draw is Batman or Wolverine, because
nice.
I've drawn them so many times that it's super easy to draw them. But if we go into like characters from their story and their identity and background and everything, I would say the Punisher is my absolute favorite character, because he's like the most badass character in the Marvel universe, because he's just a regular guy.
Yeah.
And for example, I prefer the Max series, because I love how they are using him in the real world, where he's like fighting against the mafia or like crooks and everything, instead of it doesn't make sense to have him fight against someone like Wolverine, because Wolverine can take a few bullets and then slash him into pieces and that's it.
Yeah.
But if he's like a veteran guy who's lost his family and is out for a vendetta, then everything in this, or for everything from this character makes more sense.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So then, I think one question I had too, kind of getting into your favorite characters and everything. What got you into comics in the first place? Did you just grow up reading them, or?
It's Jim Lee. If you want to blame anyone for anything, it's Jim Lee. I was drawing when I was a little kid, like everyone else. Mm-hmm. I remember that I was in kindergarten and I was like drawing dinosaurs, and the other kids came and they were like, "Ha ha, look at this stuff," and blah blah. And I was like, I stopped drawing, and I was like, I was a little kid, and then we got cable TV, and then I saw like He-Man on TV and Transformers and Turtles and everything, and I was like drawing. I was drawing what I was seeing, as a little kid, and then. Someday one of my friends who's originally from the Philippines, he had like a huge collection of comics, and he showed me the X-Men comic, and I saw Jim Lee's stuff, and I was like completely blown away. It was like a revelation to me. I saw this stuff. Everything in there, I was just a little kid, and, everything in there looked so dramatic, and all the characters looked beautiful. They looked like gods. And, I remember it was the Jim Lee and Chris Claremont X-Men run. And, by the end of the run, Magneto sacrifices himself. And I was like, I was a little kid, and I started crying. And I was like, no, he can't die. At that time, I didn't know that, characters in comics don't die.
Right. Oh, that's great, man. And I see in your Instagram you got to meet Jim Lee at least.
Yeah.
Back at New York Comic Con.
I'm not going to call him my friend, but he says that I'm his friend. To me, he will always stay, my master. He's like the absolute role model for me when it comes to comics. like, he started following me on Instagram, and I was like, holy shit, and,
I think you've made it, man.
yeah, I mean, like a few years ago, that's a bit of a funny story. I was having an argument with my father because he wanted to, like, he told me, like, son, get a real job, don't do this kind of stuff, and don't do comics, do something, proper. And on that day, that was like before Facebook and Instagram and everything, and Jim Lee had this blogspot page where he would sometimes, post drawings and then post videos, and he posted a video of him walking through his studio, and a few years ahead of that, I sent him a drawing of mine, and then he walks like to his shelf and he picks out some stuff, and then he holds up a drawing to the camera, and I'm looking closer and I'm seeing it's my picture and the drawing that I sent him, and he's like, sometimes I get pictures from artists and I keep them, and he's like, you never know who might become big. And I was like, holy shit.
Oh man, that's awesome.
That's awesome, man. That's so cool.
And, like Jim, I met him a few times now, and he's always been like super nice to me. And, I recently did my first cover for a bigger publisher, and, I wrote him a message on Instagram, and I was like, Jim, dude, they gave me a cover, and he was like, we gotta have beers together when the next time we meet. That's like so surreal for me because, I still can't believe that this guy considers me a friend, or, and, treats me that way, because who am I? I'm just a, regular guy, and he's Jim Lee,
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, and he's from what I understand, very, very nice guy, very, very put together guy that, it's very, very cool. And the work, the work he's been doing for DC has been great. He's been drawing on Suicide Squad, which is like, it's been really good to see him back in comics. Yeah, because there was a while there where we didn't really see too much of him, because he's obviously kind of running bigger picture stuff at DC.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, when I heard that he was doing Batman Hush back in the early 2000s, I think it must have been like 2003 or 4, I'm not sure anymore. And I saw this stuff, and I was like, holy shit, this stuff is basically, like his early X-Men stuff. It was such a revelation, and I was so happy that he was doing something again, and the stuff looked so awesome. And like you guys just said, he's a very down to earth guy. From I've only met him like 4 or 5 times, but he was always very kind. He's he takes time for each and every of his fans, and that is something I truly appreciate, because I've met less talented artists who were not so friendly. And that's like, I'm like, okay, like, hey, that's Jim Lee, and he's super nice, and you're just, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to talk anyone down or something like that, but Jim treats everyone the way they should be treated, with respect and everything. And there are some people who are just like, I'm drawing this book for this publisher, so I don't have time to talk to you,
Well, and that's always been one thing. You and I met through a mutual friend, Job, who is also Job Yaman, very, very talented artist from Des Moines. And that was one thing that always struck me about, you've always been very friendly and very willing to share your processes with people, and do Periscope videos and post videos of you doing your process and stuff. And I've always just thought that's so cool that you're, and any artist that you meet at a con, Jim Lee or Scotty Young is another one that's always like, he was always really cool about talking to you about his process and stuff. I always think that's so great when artists do that, it's just really good.
I mean, it's like, I don't consider myself to be, a special artist or anything like that, but I know there are some people who really like my work, and they crave to like to gain knowledge about how to like improve their own work. And I know that when I was younger, that I always wanted to see the work in progress by the artists. I always wanted to see how they're doing it, not in order to like, take from them, but to, to receive some kind of a inspiration to do it my own way. And I of course, we all love the finished product, but when I see like, I love, for example, I will always buy sketchbooks from artists, because sketchbooks, to me, they are like where all the magic is. It's like you look at the stuff, it's rough, it's unfinished, it's just in progress, but it's everything, that I love about comics. I think if I could, make a living just sketching all the time, I'd probably do that, but comics is like the closest thing that comes to this. So, and I love it. And, and telling stories is also, something that's really important to me. So, that's, yeah.
Oh, have you ever written for any comic books before, or do you mainly just like to stick to the art side?
No, I only write. I only draw. I have my own kind of ideas for comics, but I'm really terrible with writing. I would say I have good concepts, but I don't know how to write stories. Like, I would probably write myself into a corner and, don't find a way out, or I don't know, make the dialogues so long that they wouldn't fit onto a page. So
yeah, that's what editors are for. They just figure that out for you. Maybe not.
Yeah, it's a whole nother beast. I've tried it before, and actually one of the hosts from one of our shows is an illustrator, and I'm trying to put together a script right now, and it's just a whole other animal trying to do that. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an art form for itself, and I have really highest respect for writers, even though I'm sometimes ranting about how sometimes writers will write a script or something like that. But at the end of the day, like, these guys are doing amazing jobs, and without them, I would be probably just draw funny pictures. But with their help, they become stories, and that's where the most interesting part of this whole process is happening. It's making or creating stories, writing stories, and visualizing them, and therefore it's something that I highly respect and appreciate, and I enjoy working with writers, because sometimes you will just give them an idea, and they will it's a concept, or just a few words, and then they will flesh it out, and all of a sudden you basically handed out a worm to them, and they will give you a monster back, and you're like, how did you do that?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, Dexter, did you have any other questions?
I don't think so.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to interview with us. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you.
Yeah.
Do you want to let the listeners know where they can locate you on social media if they want to look and find your work?
Yeah, first of all, let me thank you guys for having me on the show. It's been my very first podcast, so that's a premiere.
Nice.
So you can find me on Facebook. Basically, the best way to find me is to actually add me on my normal profile. It's Sedat Oezgen. Maybe you guys can just leave a link or something like that on the page. And
yep.
My Instagram, you can follow me on Instagram. It's @ and then SEDATOEZGEN.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I highly recommend following you on Instagram.
Yeah,
Thank you.
It is an absolute pleasure to follow you.
Yeah, it's very, very inspirational stuff, and I mean your work's just filled with passion. You can tell that you love what you do just by seeing the work that comes out of it. So it's great to see.
I
appreciate. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I said thank you guys. I appreciate that. I don't get to talk to a lot of people who are not artists. So when I hear it from people who are not artists, it's always interesting to hear what they have to say.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, very cool. Well, thank you again so much for taking the time to meet with us, and we'll look forward to seeing more of your work on the interweb.
Thank you very much.
All right,
and have a good night.
Yeah, you too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.